Hey everybody, thank you for joining today's webinar. I would like to welcome you live from our SuitePad office in Berlin in Germany for today's webinar entitled 6 Easy Ways to Optimize Your Hotel's Written Content and Drive More Revenue. I'm Emily, I'm the Junior Marketing Manager here at SuitePad, and I will be your host and moderator for today. First things first, let me introduce to you SuitePad and to the speaker as well. So Juliana Hahn is a content creator and copywriter specializing in writing for the hospitality and tourism industries. And I represent SuitePad, which is Europe's leading provider of in-room tablets in the hotel industry. Before I hand over to Juliana to kick off the session, here's a little bit more information. So the webinar will take about 45 minutes, so 30 to 35 minutes for the presentation, and then 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A. So please feel free to post your questions at any time during the webinar, and of course also during the Q&A. To do this, just use your control panel that you see the chat window to your right, and we will answer as many questions as possible. We will also be recording this webinar, so you will each receive a copy of the recording in the next few days. I will be back later for the poll and the Q&A sessions, but without further delay, I'll pass it over to you, Juliana. Enjoy the webinar.
Well, thank you, Emily, for the great introduction. And hi, everyone. My name is Juliana Hahn. As Emily already said, I'll be taking you through this webinar today about our 6 easy ways to optimize your hotel's written content and drive more revenue. So yeah, I'd say let's get started. Let's get right into it. Before we actually start with our content, I just have a quick word of advice. I recommend you have a pen and paper or maybe a notes app on your phone or your laptop ready in case you have any aha moments or you have any great ideas that you absolutely want to jot down so you don't forget them. And maybe some of the points I mentioned today are familiar to you already. In that case, that's fantastic. That means you've already done some great research. You already have a solid base of knowledge. But then maybe you can take me re-mentioning those points as a chance to maybe see them in a new light and reapply them maybe in a different way or in a different place. And I hope that your main takeaway today is that you can see your copy and your written content in a new light rather than just a mere string of words, maybe as a powerful partner in selling your rooms and your services. So now let's keep going. Emily already gave me a great introduction. So as she said, I work as a copywriter for the hospitality industry today, but in the past, I actually studied hotel management. I worked in several hotels around the world and got like a firsthand experience of our industry, which now helps me create more insightful and more interesting content for my clients. And I also put together resources about copywriting and storytelling for hotels and resorts. And if you're interested in checking those out, you can find those on my website. Now, before we get deep into our content, I just want to give you a short overview of what we're going to be covering today. So first of all, we'll look at why your written content is so important. Then, as our title already suggests, we'll look at 6 ways that you can improve your written content. And at the very end, we'll go over some real life examples, some edits that you can make or that I've made to content to improve it, to tweak it a little bit, and hopefully get better results from that. Okay, so let's get right into it. Why is your written content so important? What difference does it make for you? So first of all, I think here we have a short question, right, Emily? We have the poll that we can bring up.
Yes, we can send it out now.
Yeah, I think
you will
that's
see it on
good
your
timing.
screen. So it should be on your screen right now. We will give you some time to answer it. So the question is, what comes to your mind when you think about written content? And you can select one or more of the following, so social media captions, advertisements, blog posts, or website copy. Okay, I think we can close the poll now. So Juliana, you can go ahead and see the results. We have social media captions, advertisements, and website copy.
Okay, that's actually really great because written content can be all of those things, right? There was no one right answer or one main answer. Like written content can literally be your social media captions, your website copy. It can be the text that you have in your guest directory. So literally every single thing that you write to promote your hotel, to introduce your hotel. And now that probably already shows you why your written content is so important, because it's everywhere and it's meant to accomplish a few very important goals. So for one thing, of course, it's supposed to inform your readers, right? It's supposed to inform your readers about what you're offering, about your hotel in general, of course, also your rooms and your services. But it's also supposed to help people get excited about your brand. It's supposed to make them feel a certain way about your product and service. Like they're supposed to want to book with you, right? And if you have great copy, you can help people feel excited about your brand and actually push them to take a certain action. That could be maybe signing up for your newsletter and leaving their email address for you, following you on social media, or even booking a table at your restaurant or even a room. Like that totally depends on what you're writing. But in any case, you always use your written content to inform your reader and then get your reader to do something, hopefully. And the better your copy, the more easy it actually is for you to achieve these goals. Okay. So now that we've looked at what we mean when we talk about written content and why it's so important, we can jump into our 6 copywriting tips and tricks to improve your content and help you generate more revenue at your hotel. Now, the first point that I'd like to highlight here is it's very important to be specific. Okay, so as I was starting to say, readers have a very specific goal when they're looking at your written content. Now that it doesn't matter whether it's your website copy or if they're browsing your guest directory or if they're looking at a poster that you've put up in your hotel. People always want to get information as quickly as possible. They want to know, what is this about and is it relevant for them? And if it is, then perhaps how can they book it? How can they get the service that you're talking about? And it's your job with your written content to make it as easy as possible for people to get this, to get their information, and then to be able to book services or things that they need or want for their stay. Now, when I talk about being specific in your copy, what does that mean? That can mean a few things. For one thing, you want to highlight the details and the things that set apart your services, your property. You want to talk about this unique selling point, as we call it, right? So, for example, if you're a hotel by the beach, then how close are you to the beach? Like just saying that you're close is, yeah, it's nice, but close can mean different things to different people. So maybe are you like beachfront, or are you 100 meters away? Are you a 5-minute walk away? Be specific and feel free to share like really concrete information to help people get a clear image of what you're offering them. So that would be the first very important part. Then when you're being specific and describing your services, it's important to avoid overused words and fluff words, because that makes your offering sound boring and cookie cutter. Because if you describe your services the same way the competitor down the street does, then how am I as the guest supposed to know what's different or what's unique or what sets this apart? So I really recommend to look at what are other people saying, and then see how can you make it a little bit different just to stand out that little bit more. Now, when we're talking about being specific, there's also some things I recommend you avoid. So, of course, I told you to include a lot of important details, but that doesn't mean like writing really boring, dry text, right? You still want to make it interesting, but you want to you want to make it interesting, but without making it too too boring and too just factual. And then also, yes, it's important to give a lot of valuable information, but you also don't want to be too wordy. So I know that sounds a bit difficult, but it's important to find this balance. I encourage you to kind of play around with that a bit, and then after some time, you'll get into it and see what's the best balance for your copy and for the information that you want to share. For that, I've also put together a quick example for us to look at to illustrate a little bit more of what I mean. So here on the left side, we've got a room description for a hotel by the ocean. And I've highlighted in red some words that are not bad, but they're just not very interesting. They don't give that much, they don't give as much information and specifics as we could. So we've got well appointed, we've got the sweeping vistas, a generous sitting area. All of that is a bit simple, right? Like we can do better. It's not terrible, but there's some room for improvement. So here on the right, I've updated our room description a little bit. So instead of talking about sweeping vistas of the ocean, I did some digging and I saw that from the hotel, since it's east facing, you can see the sunrise. So we talk about a glowing sunrise, we talk about floor to ceiling windows, and now we're creating this image of this light flooded room, some open space, seeing the sun come up in the morning. We're talking about a plush sitting area. So like for me, my mental image now is like a nice couch, like these big fluffy pillows that I can fall into at the end of the day. And these things kind of help you paint a better mental picture and picture yourself there in the place enjoying it, right? So I hope you can see a bit of a difference between the two and how the one on the right creates a more engaging mental image. So that's what I mean when I talk about being specific and a bit more engaging with the way you describe your rooms, your services, and everything you offer at your hotel. Okay, now let's move on to tip number 2, designing our content or our written content for reading. So we don't want something messy like this pole with all its terrible wires sticking out. We want things to be clear, clean, and easy to read, because your writing style and your layout, they play a big role in whether people actually are going to read your content or not. Because if it's too difficult, it can seem a bit overwhelming. It can seem like not, it can just put people off from reading, unfortunately. And of course, if people don't read your text, they will not know what you're offering and how they could be enhancing their stay with all those great things you have at your hotel. So that's why I have 4 easy ways for you to format and edit your copy to make it easier to read and a bit more engaging for your website visitors, people who read your guest directory, really for all places where you publish your written content. So I would start out with, again, keeping things short. Like you want to keep your sentences short. They shouldn't be dragging on and on and on with a lot of commas and a lot of ands. Also, your paragraphs, keep those short. Try to have paragraph breaks as often as possible so that it's easier for people to, it's easier on people's eyes. Then I also recommend using bulleted lists, right? If you have somewhere where you're listing a lot of things as part of one service, for example, you want to list all the things you offer at breakfast, don't put them in a long, long, long sentence. Keep them in a bulleted list so people have a good overview and they can skim it easily and see if the things they need are included or not. Then if you have a page where you're including a lot of information about a lot of different things, I suggest using strong headlines to separate your sections. That way, again, people can skim and see where are the things that they need, where is the information that's relevant to them right now. They can zoom in on that, skip everything else, maybe click through to a page with even more information, and that way you're helping them have a good experience on your website, maybe in your hotel app, wherever, again, your users are browsing. Use these headlines to kind of guide them through your content and help them find what they're looking for quickly and easily. And then finally, even if you have the best writing without pictures that go with it, you're really only going to get half the results. So if you're describing your beautiful room, obviously you're going to want to have beautiful pictures of your room next to it. Or if you're describing your spas or your venues, have photos that go with the thing that you're describing, and make sure they work well together to create like a coherent and just a well structured experience, so people always know exactly where they're at, what you're talking about, and you're supporting that with the images right next to it. Here also, I've put together a short example with how you can change one type of text into something that's a bit more readable. So here on the left, you have a big block of text that personally, when I see it, it makes me think, nope, too long. I don't want to read this, and I want to scroll past it. Okay, but on the right, we have pretty much the same text. We're also talking about a picnic or lunch box that you can buy at a hotel to take on a day trip. but it's much more structured. So you have a headline that piques your interest, that pulls a reader in that might be interested in this offer. Then you give a list of everything that's included. It's very easy to skim. I can immediately see if it has the things that I would want. And then at the end, you've got your call to action that rounds everything out nicely. You'd probably include a button underneath for someone to book it, or maybe a phone number where they could call the front desk to reserve this and be on their way. Okay, so you can see how we've taken pretty much the same text and taken it from something that's really kind of clunky and hard to read to something that's easy to browse and quick to understand. So we are already at our point number 3, which is forming a consistent brand voice. So you've probably heard this term being thrown around, the brand voice. It basically conveys your hotel's style. So if you want to think of your hotel as a person, for example, then your hotel's brand voice would be their personality, like how this person looks, behaves, talks, and presents themselves to the world. Now, it's very important to keep this brand voice and style consistent across all your channels. So that includes, of course, your website, your OTA profiles, as much as you can influence them. Then, of course, also your social media and any offline communication like your print ads or flyers, posters, but also your guest directory. Like all of these areas, you want to have a consistent brand voice so your guests have a very consistent and reliable experience. That way they'll know what to expect from you as a hotel, as a brand, and they'll feel comfortable because they know they're in the right place. Now, if you want to work on your brand voice or form your brand voice, there are 4 elements that you can consider. So the first one is your tone, right? Your tone, is it formal? Is it familiar? Is it friendly or a bit chummy? There's no right or wrong answer, but it really depends on your target market. It depends on the type of property you have. Who are you trying to attract? Look at how your guests talk and how your guests like to engage, and then you can use that to inform your tone when you're working on that. Then something that's closely related to your tone is your style, so that in your written content, that would be how you write. For example, do you use a lot of idioms? Do you use slang, maybe jokes? What type of jokes? Do you use things like contractions? So do you say it's instead of it is, or you are instead of you're? Do you use that or not? That's also something to consider. And then once you've chosen something, I would recommend, again, to stick with it to keep things consistent. Something that is also important is your word choice. Now, you might want to use some words and have other words where you're like, okay, no, this is not part of our brand voice. We don't want to say that. That some brands are very, very strict with that. Like I worked for a hotel where we didn't call our restaurants restaurants. We called them venues. We didn't call our staff or employees. They were our associates. So they were very strict and very rigorous with that. If you want to have a list of do and don't words, then of course you can create that as well. And finally, there's how you address your guests, how you talk to your guests. You want to address them personally, directly in your content, but of course there's always differences in how friendly you get towards them. So that's another thing you want to consider when forming your brand voice. Now, if you look at these 4 points, I recommend you sit together with your team to create some guidelines that you can use, and then share those with everyone who creates written content for your property so that everyone has a baseline to go from and can actually write content that's uniform, that really conveys your brand voice, even if it's different people doing it. Okay, now moving on to our next point, which is making your written content all about your audience. Now, of course, when we're talking about marketing content or generally writing anything about your hotel or what you offer, yes, it's about your property, it's about your services, the things that you're trying to sell, but you are trying to sell them to someone, right? To your guests, to your target audience. And that's why you can't just talk about yourself and what you do. You have to make your content about why you're offering is great for your guests. So that means you want to include your guest in your copy. Make the people who you're trying to sell to a part of your writing. And now there's a few ways you can do that, but one very powerful one is outlining a specific experience that guests can have at your hotel, or talking about how a certain service might make them feel, how a certain service might impact their stay. Okay, that is really powerful because it helps them visualize themselves at your property or experiencing a particular service. And then that in turn creates some excitement for the service. So, for example, when you're talking about the spa, you might not want to talk just about the pool there or the massages you offer, but how does it feel to get that treatment? How does it feel afterwards? If you want to get guests to imagine that, so they would feel a bit more excited about it because they want to be in that place. They already see themselves there, and that gets them a bit more excited to actually go ahead and book this thing, like take you up on this offer. Okay, so there's one easy way you can do that. Like, I recommend just kind of sprinkling that in here and there. It's using words like imagine or picture yourself at the beginning of a sentence. So here in this example, we're prompting our guests to imagine walking along the beach, having the day's last sun rays on their face, and then walking up to a beautifully set table where the aperitif is already waiting. So they can picture their romantic sunset dinner there. And just with these few words, you've already created a strong mental image that can really make a difference when you're trying to promote a service or an offer to people. Now, moving on to our fifth point, we want to show our reader that we understand them, okay? So this kind of ties into our previous point where we made everything in our written content about our audience. Here, we're trying to show people that we understand their needs. You want to show them that you understand their desire and who they are or who they identify as. And that's a really powerful way to build a connection, to show people that your brand aligns with what they believe in, what they believe about themselves. And it's a great way to also create more interest and hold their interest as well. Okay, so I've come up with some examples here as well because this is a really powerful one that's quite easy to implement as well. Now, you've probably seen this question in marketing, right? Where people ask you, oh, do you love adventures? Then you should join this day trip. Or are you fed up with slow internet? Then you should work with our company and ditch your current provider, things like that. Now, instead of going with this question, there's another way that you can turn this around just a little bit to get people thinking of like, hey, yes, that's me. And it's simply by turning it into a noun, right? So if you're talking about an outing, instead of saying, oh, do you love adventures? You say, oh, this outing is a must do for adventure seekers. And they're in people's minds, they'll be going like, oh, yeah, I like adventure. Okay, I'm one of these adventure seekers, so let me go ahead. Now, that might seem like a really small thing, but that actually works really, really well. It's a really good trick to use here and there. Again, not to overdo it, but it's a really good way to kind of address people's like how people see themselves, but also how people want to be seen by others, right? So it might be like you might get this little thought in the back of your head, like, oh yeah, if I do this or if I buy that, like I can show it off and people will see me as the person who does this thing, like as this adventure seeker or like as this world, like well-traveled person. Like it might be a bit of a superficial thing, but it actually works really well. Here's another idea. For example, if you're advertising as a hotel that works, that's great for remote workers. Instead of saying you're the ideal hotel for working remotely, you can say you're the ideal hotel for digital nomads or for remote workers. Again, using this descriptor to appeal to this thing of how people identify or what people identify as. And here we are already at our last copywriting or content writing tip, creating true interest. So we already talked about how people want to get information quickly, but now again, they don't just want to get facts and figures, but they also want to know how you can make their stay amazing, how buying an add-on service might make their stay even better and create an even more memorable experience. Now, when you're talking to them about extra services, for example, they know what the service is, right? If you're offering them a late checkout, they know what a late checkout is and how it works. But to make it more attractive to them, they need to see how booking this late checkout, for example, would make a difference for them and their stay. So you want to highlight the benefits of your offers and really show how these benefits address your guests' needs and your guests' wishes. And again, here we are with creating the deeper interest in what you're offering and building this excitement and getting people to think like, oh yeah, I need this to have some, like, to make my stay even more relaxed or to have even more fun or whatever the ultimate goal might be. Now I've put an example here again because this is an important part and I don't want it to be too theoretical. So um, before we go into the actual example, let's look again at the difference between features and benefits. So like I said, features are the physical or the service you offer or the physical attributes at your hotel. So your pool is a feature, your event venues are a feature, or your late checkout or your fine dining 3-course menu. Those are all services, right? And then the benefits are these intangible advantages that your features bring. So they're the thing that people actually dream about. So for example, if you have a pool landscape and a spa at your hotel, that's the feature, but people don't book just the pool, or they don't book your hotel just for the sake of having a pool, or they don't go to the spa just for the sake of going to the spa, but actually because of the benefit they see in their mind. So the pool might have the benefit for them that they can get a swim in the morning, right? And have a workout while they're on their trip. Or it could be that they see themselves sitting there in the sun with a good book, maybe scrolling on their phone, a cocktail in hand, relaxing. So that's the actual benefit you're talking about when you're promising them pool. So you want to always, whenever you're promoting a certain feature of your hotel or some new offer, always think of what are the underlying benefits and highlight those in your promotion to make it more interesting for people and really address them on a more emotional level rather than just the objective level of saying, oh, hey, we have a pool, we have a spa, because that will not get people to actually click that book button. Okay, so this already brings us to the end of our 6 tips. Now let's just go through those one more time. We first talked about how important it was to be specific. Then we talked about how important it is to keep your readability in mind and make sure your content is properly formatted so it's easy to read and easy to skim. Then next was our consistent brand voice, coming up with your brand voice, sharing it with your team, and then using it on in all your written content, wherever it may be, online and offline. Then we spoke about how important it is to make your written content about your audience and to show that you understand and you know your reader, you know what they want, you know what they need. And finally, we learned how important it is to highlight the benefits to create true interest, to create true excitement, and get people to really be happy about booking and about your service. Okay, so like I said, we've got our 6 main points covered here. Now let's look a little bit more at some examples. Okay, here on this slide we have an example from a hotel that is using SuitePad in their rooms, and they've put a short intro here for people. So they're telling people what the SuitePad is, what they can do with it, and they're giving them different options, right? Now, you don't need to read the whole intro here. The thing is just that, unfortunately, it's a bit long, but it also, it doesn't really make it too interesting when I read through it. So I gave the copy a little redo and I put that on the next slide. Now it'll be a bit much to go through every single word, which we're not going to do because that would keep us here until very late, and we don't want that. So instead, we'll make all the slides available for you afterwards so you can go through them again and have a closer look at it. But I'll point out a few key aspects that I'd like to highlight that are important here. Okay, so this was what we started with, and then here I've put together something that we could use instead. So something they did really well was the bulleted list. So I kept that, but I added a few more things that they had in their content, like in the main block of text as well. So as you can see, we have some shorter intro text now. We've added a few more bullet points to the list of all the things you can use your SuitePad to do. And we started out actually addressing our reader. We're saying, oh, you're holding your SuitePad, and it's the key to a fabulous stay at this hotel, right? So we're making it a little bit fun. We're making, maybe this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek as well. And then we introduce just in one sentence what the SuitePad is, what it does. In the next sentence, we just tell them quickly how to use it, because there's really not much instruction needed, right? Since it's really intuitive. And next, we're already telling them everything they can do. And of course, we can link the individual bits and pieces here so that people can check out breakfast if they click on the breakfast option to see what the exact offer would be, right? So I've used a few of the tips and tricks I told you about, like expanding your bulleted list, keeping things short, and making it light and easy to read. Then in our next example, we've got a hotel introducing their breakfast option, their breakfast restaurant. Now again, what they're doing really well is that they're keeping it short. They've got all the relevant information there, and they've got the nice button that's nice and prominent to book a table at the restaurant, which is good, right? I mean, you want to make it easy for people to book once you've convinced them that this restaurant is where they want to go. But still, there were a few small things that I think could be updated. So here on the next page, again, we don't have to read like every single word. You can go through it a bit more afterwards if you would like. I've changed the intro a little bit. So I address the people that might be going there, saying that it's good for different target groups. So it's great for a quick bite between meetings. So that would appeal to maybe your business guests, maybe even outside guests. And then also a longer sit down for families. So if you're traveling with your family, you want to have a nice drawn out breakfast, this restaurant works for that as well. And we also we paint a little picture with saying that it's a light flooded dining room, because in the photo we saw that they have like nice floor to ceiling windows and overall a relaxed atmosphere. And then again, for the breakfast, I've described a bit more what they offer, put it in bullet points again so we can read over it quickly. And then when we talk about lunch and dinner and the changing seasonal menus, we can just include a link there for people to actually open the menu and see what's currently on offer. Then you don't have to change that copy every time you put in a new menu. You could also refer to your Christmas menu or your spring season menu, but then you'd have to go and update your copy. And to keep it simple for you as well, like a more generic thing like this can help avoid extra editing needs. And now we're already on our last example right here. It's another restaurant description, and they give a beautiful description that helps you picture the place. But honestly, there were quite a few words in there that I didn't understand. So if I'm having this problem, I'm sure some other people might as well. Like for example, in the second line, you see camel lights and gogot. I don't know what that is. So I feel like if you have a lot of things in there that people don't understand, you might throw readers off and lose them. So in my edit, I've just changed that up a little bit. I love how they've put the photo of the restaurant on the top. So if you change the copy, then obviously you can always keep this photo there. But now here I have this as an edit. We keep this quote from the chef up top, which I thought was a really nice touch. And then we pick up this idea that they had about stepping into a lush garden, right? You really paint this picture because that's what makes this restaurant amazing. I mean, I checked out their website and their social media, and it really does look like this lush green garden. So we want to keep that idea alive in our copy. We tell guests to imagine stepping into this green garden and saying, well, you've just pictured that. That's exactly what our restaurant feels like. And then I paint the picture a little bit more, talking about the trees, the natural stone that they use in their decoration. And we talk about this kind of elevated culinary offering that they have by referring to this culinary journey, right? So here I've picked a bit more of a refined tone because I think we're going after a bit of a higher level diner audience here. And then finally, at the end, we talk about the bar, which they also mentioned in the original text. And I thought this was a great occasion to use this idea I told you about, how to use things that guests identify as. So I talk about the curious, they can try the inventive cocktails. Traditionalists can stick with their established classics. So you're appealing to two different target audiences in the same place, telling them, hey, we have something for both of you. Okay, now that was it from my side. Now, if you have any questions, do feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will do my very best to answer them.
We actually do have some questions. We have two right now. We would
Oh,
have time for
fantastic.
both. Yeah. So the first question is, where do I start if I want to improve my copy today?
Oh, that's a very good question. Another thing that we could talk about for a very long time. But since there's so many different places where you use written content, right? Like your website, socials, a guest directory, your other promotional materials, I would say look at the one that where it would have the biggest impact. So maybe for you, that's your website. Okay, so you can start on your homepage and edit bit by bit, right? You have a few tips up your sleeve now that I shared with you, and just go through it bit by bit. You don't have to do the whole thing at once. Just find one place where you want to start. Do a little bit today, do a little bit tomorrow. Of course, if you have a bigger block of time, you can do more. That's fantastic. And then see how you could reuse some of that content, right? So maybe something great that or something new that you've written for your homepage, maybe that would also work when you're introducing one of your services on your social media, or maybe it would also work in your guest directory, right? So you don't have to recreate new content again and again and again for every different channel, but maybe there's ways where you can reuse it and then save a little bit of time. So I would recommend, like I said, finding the place where you feel you would have the biggest impact, where there's the most need right now, and then go from there step by step.
Great answer. Thanks, Juliana, for that answer. We have a second question as well. So this one is, I am a hotel in France. Should I use American English or English English?
Aha, yes, that's also a good question. I've seen a lot of properties in Europe stick with British English, and then properties in North America use American English. Of course, if you're a property, for example, in the UK, you use British English. But now, if you're in a country where English is not the first language, I would advise you pick one and then just stick with that everywhere. So I really don't think there's much of a right or wrong answer here, but pick one and then make sure you stick with that everywhere.
Very true, very true. Agreed. Thank you, Juliana, for answering questions. If the audience has any more questions, you can always write that down in the control panel. Otherwise, you can always send an email to Juliana or myself, of course, after the end of this.
Yes, absolutely. We're around. We're happy to help out if anything else comes up now or later.
Definitely, definitely. But for now, thank you everyone so much for your attention. Thank you, Juliana, for the amazing presentation. And we wish you an amazing evening.